I'm here with Caleb Maupin. He's a widely acclaimed speaker, writer, journalist, and political analyst. He has traveled extensively in the Middle East and Latin America. He was involved with the Occupy Wall Street movement from its early planning stages and has been involved in many struggles for social justice. He is an outspoken advocate of international friendship and cooperation, as well as a 21st century socialism. Please welcome Caleb Maupin. Thanks for being here, Caleb.
Sure.
Now I want to talk about your book here. Here's your book, BreadTube Serves Imperialism. Explain. Now I don't know most of the people in this book. I thought I was going to know everybody. I don't know any of them. So tell people what BreadTube is, and then tell people how they serve imperialism.
Well, I got kind of sucked in. I was asked to debate somebody, and so somebody wanted to debate me about socialism. So I debated this character, Destiny Stephen Bennell, and we had quite an interesting debate about socialism, and it was very odd. And so then from there, I was sucked into this internet subculture, this internet universe that presents itself as left-wing, that presents itself as socialist or Marxist or anarchist, but is really just a way to rile up young people who associate with progressive causes, anti-racism, workers' rights, and get them supporting the U.S. political establishment against the right wing. And so the more I kind of observed this internet subculture, and these people are getting hundreds of thousands, millions of views. They're being promoted by the New Yorker magazine, and they're speaking in the name of Marxism and socialism and leftism. But the essence of what they say is that the United States and U.S. imperialism, they are the good guys against, these authoritarian regimes around the world. They're spreading freedom. They say that socialism is just an employee stock ownership program. They don't question the rule of profits. They just want to kind of experiment with worker cooperatives, basically. And it's pretty clear that they are getting propped up by one wing of the establishment. Now, in the book, I go into the evidence of that. But then we have further evidence of that thanks to the work of Max Blumenthal and the Gray Zone. We now know that one of these voices, Abigail Thorne, was directly being subsidized by the British government, by foundations tied to USAID and to the British royal family and such. So, what I said in the book based on estimates, right, based on some of the people in the background advising them that I heard about and other things, has now been pretty well confirmed. These folks are basically some kind of psyop to get young people that have socialistic or anti-imperialist instincts and get them to serve the empire.
So you're saying there's evidence to back this up, that there are YouTubers in the political lefty space, and a lot of them. You're saying a lot, not just, but a lot of them, and they're called BreadTube, and you're saying that those people are somehow being co-opted by the intelligence communities to push an agenda?
Sure. I mean, I received quite a bit of information about who is advising them. There's an individual who's tied to military psychiatrists who appeared on CNN calling for mass deprogramming of the country after January 6th. And there are other things that point to some kind of covert support, the mainstream media highlighting some of these people and celebrating them. And then their foreign policy stances could come directly from CNN. And then we have that great report that was done by the Gray Zone, and that all points to this. But the thing is, there's a precedent for this, right? We often talk about the Congress for Cultural Freedom program, which was in the 1950s. The CIA realized that basically, if they wanted to hurt the left and hurt Marxists, one way to do it was to start funding certain voices. And you had the CIA set up Partisan Review magazine. You had the CIA basically launch a whole program to subsidize left-wing voices that were anti-communist, that were against the Soviet Union, that were against China. And there's a long history of covert manipulation of left-wing voices, kind of presenting left-wing voices that are, in a way, acceptable to the establishment. And it was actually Irving Kristol, who was the director of the Congress for Cultural Freedom program for the CIA. He eventually became considered the ideological father of neoconservatism. But a lot of big names that one associates with the left, like Mary McCarthy, Hannah Arendt, Susan Sontag, they got their start with this CIA-funded publication. So there's a precedent for this kind of behavior. And during the Cold War, this was done, yes.
So this isn't new. In fact, so this isn't new that the CIA, the intelligence communities, that they co-opt media and they fund media directly a lot of times. and to push an agenda, imperialistic, hegemonic agenda. This is not new. This isn't a crazy conspiracy theory. This has been documented. Well, the Church Committee, that was in the 70s, and can you talk about that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it became revealed in the 1970s with the Church Committee. That was during the presidency of Jimmy Carter. You had a congressional committee that investigated the FBI and CIA, and they revealed a number of things, including Project Mockingbird, which was, the CIA's wing that was handling the media, as well as Project MK Ultra, which was about promoting hallucinogens and drugs on college campuses and into left-wing and radical spaces, and that there was all kinds of foul play. And again, this is documented. This whole Yeah, I mean, these are facts. These are historical facts. There are mainstream media articles about it. There are whole academic books that have been published about this kind of thing. And it's so sad that they've cultivated this atmosphere where if anyone says anything like this, they just go, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. That's a conspiracy. No, these are things that are acknowledged from the history. And based on these historical precedents of manipulating activists, manipulating left-wing voices, based on some of the people associated with BreadTube, and now, based on that smoking gun we got from Gray Zone, it's pretty clear what BreadTube is. It's an attempt to control the narrative and make sure that people who are interested in socialism and workers' rights and opposing the police state, that they, follow a certain foreign policy agenda. And there's nothing particularly scandalous about this. We should almost expect this kind of behavior at the end of the day, right? I mean, this is how they work. They try to craft discourse in their own way. What's interesting is that the primary activities of the BreadTube crowd seem to be about getting left-wing voices to kind of, participate in this partisan red state versus blue state fight. And you, Jimmy, have been targeted ridiculously because, oh my goodness, you interviewed somebody from the Boogaloo Boys. Oh my gosh, right? This cancel culture, never talk to any Trump supporter, never talk to anyone on the right. This is a big part of this because they don't want an actual movement of the people from below, where you have people with different perspectives and different ideologies, different religious backgrounds. They don't want that. What they want is an army of foot soldiers to do the work of Joe Biden and protect Joe Biden from the Republicans. And if you can just, cancel anyone who's deemed quote unquote right wing, you can isolate people and make them loyal foot soldiers of one section of the ruling class.
So they did come back. So that's the biggest thing that they seem to want to shut down, is if beating the establishment and the intelligence community, if somebody from the left and the right figure out that they have common enemies that they can work together against, that's what they have to demonize, like they did to me when I interviewed that Boogaloo Boy, which, by the way, people still don't realize it. Boogaloo Boy, 100% different than Proud Boys. Boogaloo Boys are the antidote to Proud Boys. Boogaloo Boys are anti-imperialism, anti-cop, anti-Trump, anti-racist, and pro-LGBTQ and pro-Black Lives Matter. That's what Boogaloo Boys are. But the BreadTube people wanted to manipulate that and distort that into Boogaloo Boys are right-wing racists, just like Trump and Proud Boys and Nazis. That's what they wanted people to think, and it's the exact opposite. And that's why I trended on Twitter for 3 days straight one time, was because they have all their bots and everything coming out to try to create a false narrative that Jimmy Dore's working with Nazis, instead of Jimmy Dore is reaching out to working class libertarians who share a lot of the same goals of people on the progressive left, and we share a common enemy. And so they had to try to distort it. It's not. It works on some people. It certainly isn't helpful, but it's to a point where when people attack me that way, it actually does help me now, because now they see the people who are doing those attacks, and we've explained to them who they are, except I didn't know who these people are. Who are the people who are on BreadTube? You mentioned someone named Destiny. I don't know who that is. Who else? But these are popular people.
Sure. Well, this Destiny character, who I guess, he's kind of the kingmaker of BreadTube, if not part of BreadTube himself, right?
Really?
He's a guy from Nebraska who worked at a carpet cleaning company, but figured out a way to start playing video games on the internet full time. And he became kind of famous for playing a video game on the internet, and that was his life. And then randomly, around the time Trump got elected, he suddenly started debating right-wingers. And he was kind of a right-winger himself. He was a libertarian or something. But then he started debating right-wingers, and mainstream media outlets were like heralding him as, oh, this famous internet troll is going to debate the right wing and debate debate Trump supporters, and he was getting a lot of play that way. And it seemed like that was his new gig, was debating folks. There's this character. I almost don't want to say his name, but I think we know him as Vosh. And this character, I mean, his father's a well-connected Hollywood person. He's from Beverly Hills, and he right now is just a cheerleader for the Azov battalion and the far right extremist forces in Ukraine. He's gone all the way in to he wants this war to keep going. He wants Russians to die. He wants a big war between the United States and Russia, and he's made that clear. And again, if you watch his streams, what's kind of amusing is that he's not very familiar with left-wing politics at all. I mean, he is handed lists of quotations, from Lenin, from Marx, and he'll read them off as if that means you should vote for Joe Biden. And it's really kind of pathetic to watch. But one thing that I find to be interesting about all of this, you talk about the importance of people coming together. Mumia Abu-Jamal, that was an important cause in the 90s. This was a black liberation fighter who was facing the death penalty. And the reason that Mumia Abu-Jamal is still alive, he didn't get the death penalty, he's still in prison, but the reason that the state of Pennsylvania couldn't execute this former Black Panther was because a lot of people of different political views came together to stand against his execution. You had the far left, communists, anarchists, others. You also had Black nationalists, people with the Nation of Islam, Minister Farrakhan. You also had Catholic priests and nuns. The Pope stood against the execution of Mumia. You had Mennonites and Amish people. And in 1995, it was hundreds of thousands of people piled into Philadelphia with one demand: don't execute Mumia Abu-Jamal. And that's why Mumia, this Black revolutionary journalist, wasn't executed, because people came together, overcame their differences. But nowadays, it seems like instead of doing that, we're supposed to engage in this kind of politics where the left talks to their crowd and riles them up and tries to purify them of any deviant thoughts within their own ranks. The right talks to their own crowd and does this, and everyone gets poorer, and the country polarizes politically, and austerity and war march ahead. And this is a setup for disaster. This isn't how serious political organizing works.
I couldn't agree with you more, and that is the biggest threat to them, is the populist left, populist right, realizing we have a common enemy, realizing that we can organize together against the establishment, against the oligarchy, to stop war, to stop police brutality, to stop racism. We could do. There's a lot of things to help. Also, to help our economy and get a living wage for people. That's the last thing they want. They're now happy that gas prices are so high, so people will be forced to go back to poor-paying jobs. That's the world we're living in. And you're telling me that those people, those pretend. So it seems to me that the BreadTube, or the people who say they're progressives or lefties on YouTube, but they're actually just shills for the Democratic Party. That's what I've noticed when I've looked a little into it. It's every time they're like, well, you have to vote for Joe Biden. You have to vote for Hillary Clinton. You have to vote for the squad. You have to vote for Democrats. And Democrats are better than Republicans, and they come up with crazy reasons why the Democrats are better than the Republicans. Meanwhile, more and more people fall into poverty. More and more people go bankrupt. More and more people can't get health care. And we have more and more billions and trillions of dollars for imperialism and wars, while they keep telling you to keep voting for them. I mean, and everybody does that, from Kyle Kalinske to Crystal Ball to, right? I mean, of course, the Young Turks. Would you consider those people BreadTube? Because it seems like they're doing the same thing, telling everybody to keep voting Democrat. And that's so you can go off and have your Marxist theories, and you can criticize Democrats, but you have to, at the end of the day, vote for them. And you can't ever entertain a third party. That's what I see that comes out of BreadTube. Would you consider that?
Sure. Well, it's the same script. They're reading from the same script. There's no question about it. I think BreadTube is more specifically aimed at teenagers, people in their early 20s.
Okay.
And it's got more of a grunge vibe. It's people sitting in their basements streaming. It's documentaries and things that are more alternative looking. It's got that more punk rock alternative aesthetic. But it's the same script that Young Turks is using, the same script that Kyle Kalinske is using, same narrative. What I find interesting is, again, they've gone after you because, oh my gosh, you interviewed a Bugaloo boy, right? But none of this cancel culture ever applies to Joe Biden.
Ever.
you ain't black, author of the crime bill. But you just have to vote for him because
he built the cages those kids are in. He's the one who made it so you can't get rid of your medical debt or your student debt and bankrupt you. He made it. He's been the screwer of the American people. He's been why are most of our prisons filled up with black and brown people? Because of Joe Biden. So they'll never cancel him, but they'll try to cancel me when I speak about Joe Biden in an honest way and tell people to stop voting for him.
Sure. And the crazy thing is, there's the narrative that they have is so shallow. It's basically there's this group of bad people called fascists, and they're under every rock and they're hiding behind every tree. Yes. Every Trump supporter is a Nazi. Yes. Every conservative is a Nazi. And they're not even understanding that fascism, there is a scientific Marxist understanding of it. Read R. Palm Dutt, read Georgy Dimitrov, right? There is an understanding of where fascism comes from, and it flows from the breakdown of capitalism. It's a system, when you have the capitalist system with profits in command, you inevitably have economic breakdowns and, great leaps in technology lead to greater poverty. And as there's greater poverty in society, one faction of the ruling class wants to lock down society, drive wages down and reduce living standards and degrow, which is another big BreadTube theme, degrowth. They want to degrow in order to try and stabilize the capitalist economy. There's a scientific Marxist understanding of what fascism actually is. But in their minds, fascism is a question of good people versus bad people. And if we just drive these bad people out, then everything will be fine. Well, no, it's not a question of good people versus bad people. It's a problem rooted in the system, the fundamental flaws of the capitalist system.
So they think that people they'll say Donald Trump and Ted Cruz are fascists, but guys like Joe Biden, Kamala Harris are good people. As if they don't serve the exact same people and have almost the exact same agenda, except with tweaks on the margins.
Sure. Well,
they're all.
You have to understand. Go ahead. Trump says naughty words. He said naughty words, and it's all about words with these people. It's all about words. It's all about aesthetics. It's all about imagery. Nothing about concrete, actual analysis. Joe Biden can set up the crime bill. Joe Biden can be driving the wages of workers down. None of that matters. It's all just this question of aesthetics and they're triggered by what they think of as authoritarianism, right? If anything reeks of, a strong government getting things done, it scares them, whether it's coming from the right or the left. And again, go back to the Congress for Cultural Freedom and Susan Sontag and her redefinition of fascism, where fascism becomes groups of people working together for a common aim when they're trying to equate the Soviet Union with Nazi Germany. There's a long precedent for these kind of distortions of left-wing politics, and BreadTube is a continuation of that, I maintain.
Well, and again, the reason why I'm not aware of who BreadTube is because I'm not in the demo that they're going after, right? Because they're going after younger people. Sure. And are they mostly on Twitch or YouTube or both?
Twitch, YouTube, they're all across social media platforms. They're very widely promoted.
What about that Hassan Piker? So when I see that Hassan Piker, Cenk Uyghur's nephew,
sure,
super talent. He had an article, a positive article written about him in the Business Insider or some magazine like that. I don't know which one it was. But the reason I know this is because every time I logged into Twitter for a week straight, it was promoting that article. How does that happen?
Exactly. And if you look at how BreadTube started on Reddit, it was largely there was a lot of money being handed out in order to encourage people to debunk the ideas of the right wing, right? The right wing was gaining on the internet. There were a lot of right wing YouTube channels, et cetera. And a lot of money started showing up in people's Patreons, and a lot of algorithmic support was being provided for people to debunk the right wing. And that's good. I mean, there's a lot of crazy stuff on the right wing, conspiracy theories and notions that we should privatize everything and roll back all government regulation. So it's not inherently bad. But at the end of the day, they're also targeting people on the left, like you, like me, who dare actually challenge the system. And they're trying to cultivate the left to just be foot soldiers for some of the most powerful capitalists out there.
For the Democratic Party.
Jeff Bezos, the Walton family,
Bill Gates.
At Walmart. Yeah, I mean, that's who they ultimately want leftism to serve. And no, I mean, the goal is to get a society where the banks and the factories and the industries and the centers of economic power are organized to serve public good and not the profits of a few, a rationally organized economy. That's the goal. The goal is to overturn this system of imperialism and build a society where the needs of people come first. And you're not going to solve that with worker cooperative schemes. And you're not going to solve that by voting for Joe Biden. Ultimately, it's a question of getting working people to realize their own economic interests. And they have a word for that, right? If you want to raise the minimum wage or if you want Medicare for all, you're a class reductionist. That's their term.
What?
Immediately they scream class reductionist.
What does that mean?
I don't know. I don't know what it means, but if you want to fight for economic justice, you're a bad person. You're a class reductionist. And they have all kinds of lists of accusatory names they throw at people. So, and one of them is if you believe in economic justice, if you raise economic issues, you don't focus on the culture war, you're a class reductionist.
That is that's well, what I enjoy telling people is that when you hear people who say they're on the left in the United States, and they say things like, "Oh, we have to organize along class lines, right? We have to organize." You'll even hear the knuckleheads at TYT say this thing: "We have to organize along class lines." They have no idea what that means, and if they do, they're just blatantly lying because they do not mean what organizing along class lines means. Is that you organized with people in the same class, meaning whatever political stripe they come from, meaning if they're a libertarian or a socialist or a Republican or a boogaloo boy or a socialist or a communist, all those people have to come together. That's called, so it's just like when you organize in a union. I've been in unions my whole life. The way you don't organize a union is you don't go to the shop floor and go, who here's a boogaloo boy? You're out. Who here's a Proud Boy? You're out. Who's here as a libertarian gun nut? You're out. Who here's a Trump voter? You're out. Okay, who's left? Now we're going to organize against the man with you people. That's not how organizing works. It's only powerful when you get people who totally disagree with each other to agree on something. And that's when change really happens. Like when we had the Medicare for All march this summer, people were complaining that there's some right-wingers on stage. That's because Medicare for All means Medicare for all, and that's when you can actually pressure government, when you have people from all different stripes of politics combined and converging on one idea. That's how you make something happen, which is why the Black Panthers teamed up with the KKK in Las Vegas to get their welfare checks back. That's why they killed Fred Hampton. Why did they kill Fred Hampton? Because he was organizing black people? No, because Fred Hampton was organizing Southern racist whites with black people in Chicago, and they were realizing they had more in common than they had separate and different, and that's when they killed Fred Hampton. So that's the thing that they can have, and that's what people who say we have to organize along class lines, when you hear somebody at the Young Turks say we have to organize, they don't mean it for a second. They hate people who are in the different political party than they are and in the same class. They hate those people, and in fact, their business model is built on clickbait, hating those people. So would you like to comment on that?
Well, sure. And, you know, the biggest cure in U.S. history for racism has always been the picket line. When black workers and white workers see they have a common economic interest, this breaks down the divisions. It was the CIO and in their effort to spread unions, it was that broke down the racial divisions. When the Communist Party in the 1930s was going into the auto plants and the steel mills, often they would break down historical divisions among workers and build multiracial unions. You hear about in the South when the sharecroppers were organizing, how William Z. Foster and Gus Hall would go to a town and give a speech, and how the white workers would rip up their Ku Klux Klan cards and say, my enemy isn't the black people, my enemy is the plantation owners and the capitalists and the big bankers. That is how you overcome racism, is getting people to see they have something in common, bringing people together. It's through those kinds of struggles that you can break down inequality and that people can see that they have more in common. And by creating artificial divisions ahead of time and discouraging economic struggle, you're setting the stage for the opposite. You're setting the stage for basically whipsawing the population. There's an old device they call the whipsaw, right? And it's like a two-man saw. And when one guy's pushing, the other guy's pulling. And when one guy's pulling, the other guy's pushing. That's kind of what they're doing right now in the United States. They want one section of the population to think that they can only gain at the expense of another section of the population. And then they go to the other section and say, oh, you can only gain at the expense of the other one. And we've got working people all throughout the United States pushing and pulling on each other in a culture war. And we're all getting poorer. And their agenda of creating a low-wage police state marches ahead. And we got to have class solidarity. We got to go against it. Fred Hampton is a great example of that kind of work.
Low-wage police state. That is exactly what they're pushing for. Well, anyway, great work on this. BreadTube Serves Imperialism, Examining the New Brand of Internet Socialism by Caleb Maupin. It's available at Amazon and all the places where you can buy books. Do you have a website?
Sure. I'm at calebmaupin.com, but you can also check out, I work with a think tank called the Center for Political Innovation. We're at cpiusa.org. We're trying to bring people together, try to formulate an economic program to rescue the United States from the crisis we're facing. cpiusa.org. It's the Center for Political Innovation.
Caleb Maupin's been our guest. Great work, and look forward to talking to you more. Thanks for coming on the show, and I apologize again for the delay. Thanks for being a good sport.
Sure thing.
Hey, we're doing our live stand-up tour. We're going to be in Orlando. We're going to be in Tampa, Columbus, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, much, much more. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all the tickets. And you can come see our shows in Los Angeles, too. We do one weekly. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com and become a premium member while you're there. Get all the extra content. Thank you.